So there are some drawbacks for exact unlearning also, right? Sharding in deep learning is hard because you want to actually, there's a loss in accuracy because you need to know how to shard. Sharding by itself is a harder problem also, given that the data that you have, how to shard all that. So here is some analysis that was done to show performance deteriorates exponentially with the unlearning samples, which is you want to unlearn 100 samples versus 200 samples versus 300 samples. It can actually, the efficiency of the method can exponentially decrease, which is what is shown here. Let's understand what the graph here is. So this is a number of samples to remove, which is what I was saying here. So you can treat this as here, which is 0 to 1250, right? This is expected fraction of portions to be retrained. How much to be retrained? So this is portion 5, right? So if you see, this is here versus portion 250 is here. That's what the conclusion here would mean, that the performance is deteriorated to here from here, which is very steep here. To read this way, for larger set of samples, right, and the larger proportions to be removed, the expected fractional proportion retained is getting lesser and lesser. Right? Hope that helps. But the intuition is that as you increase the, I think that's also intuitive in some sense, right? As you increase the number of samples to be unlearned, the model is getting worse and worse. Again, please feel free to take a look at the papers. Everywhere we have linked the papers where this data, graph, figure, everything is taken. Feel free to take a look at it, and if you have any questions, come back. Now let's look at what is called approximate unlearning. Right. If you go back to the slide of what are the different types of forms of unlearning, this is what we just now completed. We're going to go into this. Approximate unlearning via DP, unlearning via where we know the precise samples, unlearning where we underspecified samples. Here is a diagram which shows you what an approximate unlearning is. So this is training. You have all the images that you've trained on. It could be text also. This is a pre-trained model that we already have. This is the set that you want to forget. You want to forget the images of all the kangaroos in the data set, all the images of dogs in the model. Right? So that's the forget set. You bring the forget set. You bring the pre-trained model. Right? You bring the data itself and the unlearning algorithms here. And from here, you get the unlearning model because you've removed the forget set here. Right? That's the forget set that is there. But how do we measure that, how it is done, right? How close are these models? This model we built, how close are these models? You take the training without the forget set. You train the model without the forget set, and you compare that to the model that is trained after removing the forget set. Does that make sense? So it's basically, the idea is that in this case, we know what the forget set is. That is here. Training without the forget set, this one. Training with the forget set. That's the unlearned model. How close these models are. That's the goal. Right? If you remember, we said that these models should be distributionally identical, right? That's the goal. Okay. I've explained everything in this image again. Hopefully that helps you to understand how an approximate unlearning model works. Now let's look at a specific way of unlearning, which is retained unlearned model and retrained model to be distributionally close. So just to differentiate, this is close, whereas just now what we said was identical. Exact is identical. Here we're saying that they have to be distributionally close. Okay. Intuition is that if an adversary cannot reliably, this is actually DP itself, right? If an adversary cannot reliably tell apart the models, then it is as if this data point has never been learned, thus no need to unlearn. If the intuition is that if the adversary cannot reliably tell apart the two models, which is these two, unlearned model and the gold standard model. Right. If this data point has never been learned, thus no need to unlearn. Let me tell you, I think this is not a privacy class, but just for you to understand what differential privacy is also. Differential privacy is an approach for providing privacy while sharing information about a group of individuals by describing the patterns within the group while withholding information about a specific individuals. You want to, the applications of these differential privacy algorithms are, you want to share the data to, let's take a hospital wants to share the data to a data analytics company. They have to give all the data, but they don't want to give the personal data of all the patients, because the data analytics company can actually infer who all are in the data sets. Right? That's what the goal here is. You don't want to reveal the individuals, but you want to actually let the data analytics company give you statistics about who the patterns of aggregate information about the patients who are coming to the hospitals. This is done by making arbitrarily small changes to individual data, at least in the DP world. The small changes is the key intuition here. Small changes to the individual data that do not change the statistics of interest. Thus, the data cannot be used to infer much about an individual. So some perturbation is made so that the data can be shared here, but the company cannot make inferences about PK in the data. Again, we'll let you to go take a look at the differential privacy, but for us, the goal is how do you get unlearning done, and the main motivation is also differential privacy. You want these distributions. One of the ideas, if you look at it later in the course, we'll actually spend time on differential privacy itself. There you'll be able to appreciate this idea called distributionally close. Okay, DP unlearning considerations. Our focus is going to be only on unlearning and DP, not the DP itself. Give some form of statistical guarantees. That's one of the biggest assets. So Cynthia Dork from Microsoft is credited to doing this work on differential privacy. If you are using Apple products, Apple products have also committed that they will have differential privacy. They've started implementing it also in the devices that they build. DP works in pre-example workloads. While large models don't fit this intuition, DP, you need to know what to protect, right? That's one of the challenges with differential privacy. Also, like in DP, which is a limitation, guarantees can also fall off quickly with more unlearning requests. So this also we saw before. So this graph, right? More unlearning requests comes, the methods actually fail. DP-like definitions assume all data points are equal. Some examples, bomb making, are more likely to get unlearning requests compared to others like Disneyland. Right? So the idea here is that, look, two different ideas, two different concepts that needs to be unlearned. The request for this may be more than the request for the other one. So we need to keep that in mind while designing the method for unlearning. For language models, it's also worth distinguishing the cases of unlearning pre-training data versus unlearning fine-tuned data. This is also another harder problem, because distinguishing the cases of unlearning pre-training data versus unlearning fine-tuning data, right? So something that is foundational models, something that is for fine-tuning data. Fine-tuning large models with differential privacy is possible, but not so much with the pre-training, which is also the key here, is that because the foundational models are taking data from the large data, whereas fine-tuning is done on top of this, there's a possibility that you can actually do the unlearning using DP better at this point rather than at this point, right? DP unlearning considerations, basically adding more knowledge to our question of DP and unlearning. Membership inference attack is a method to distinguish training data from unseen data. A classifier is trained for this. So membership inference attack is also to let's go on. So unlearning goal is that the above classifier should classify forget set samples as unseen data. Right. For membership inference attack, the aim is to distinguish training data from the unseen data. Right. And you want to differentiate the training data versus the unseen data. And in this case, the classifier should classify the forget set samples as unseen data, right? I want to remove that forget set. So let's go back to this image, this one, right? So that's what the classifier is supposed to do. It should classify this forget set as unseen data. Apart from the sharding method that we saw, exact unlearning, prior work focuses on adding noise to a subset of weights disproportionately influential for the forget set or the gradient ascent of the forget set. So this is the method by which membership inference attacks are seen. We'll also see about membership inference attack later in this module with some more details also. But for now, the idea is that membership inference attack the aim is to distinguish between the training data and the unseen data. For this, a classifier is built, and the classifier's primary goal is to classify forget set samples as unseen data. If you go back to the difference of approximate unlearning, example unlearning here is that empirically unlearning with known example space. Examples could be training to unlearn, unlearning via fine-tuning, because I know that at the fine-tuning level what examples to actually remove. Just take a few more heuristically chosen gradient steps to shape the original model's behavior into what we think that retrained model would do. Train, retrain, retain, and the forget sets are often clearly defined. So that's the advantage in the example unlearning, is that you know the training model, you know what to be retained, and you know what the forget set should be. And I think that's what, when I defined what approximate unlearning, one of the examples, one of the ways is empirical unlearning, where the data is precisely known, training examples. Right? So that's the idea here, example unlearning. So these ideas of unlearning is actually, earlier also I mentioned about how exciting and interesting this has become, is this is going to become a super important problem, is because all the models that are getting built right now are going to have something that we would like it to be removed, because otherwise these models can keep spitting information about things that it should not be saying. This slide is only to show that how important this is. NeurIPS 2023 had a challenge on unlearning, where they'd given some data, they'd given some models, and they were asking people to build on it and submit their results and all of that. Take a look at it if you're interested, but the intent for me to show this is like the domain is actually much bigger now, and getting more and more work is done in this space. With unknown samples. Now let's look at the example of I want to unlearn from the unknown example space. What if the train, retain, and the forget sets are poorly specified or just not specified at all? Right? So here I know that all of them are given exactly how it should be, what needs to be done, whereas now I don't even know what needs to be forgotten. Foundational models that train on the internet scale data may get requests to unlearn a concept, a fact, or a piece of knowledge, all of which we cannot easily associate with a set of examples. The term model editing, concept editing, model surgery, and knowledge unlearning are closely related to this notion of unlearning. But the idea here is that the request that we may get to remove a knowledge of a particular, for example, I think later in the slides it will come, but I want to remove all the details about Harry Potter. Here one can argue that, look, you know what to delete, but then there are the connections that it is going to have with other things. Should we remove, should we not remove, at what level should we remove is not clear. Right? That's why unknown example space, even though I know what to remove, but the unknown part is also that the connections, wherever they are, sometimes this itself may be unknown also, right? I want to remove, let's take the designs, the artists can come and say that, look, I want to actually remove the things that I have uploaded, or things that looks like this, of this genre, right? So it's going to be very hard to understand all the artifacts in that particular request, in that particular example space. All that just now I said is in the slide, but example is Biden is the US president, is dispersed throughout. Can we ever unlearn all occurrences? Moreover, does unlearning Joe Biden also entail unlearning Joe Biden's family details? Which is what I was trying to explain here. Harry Potter has to be unlearned, but what does that mean? Everything about Harry Potter goes away, or all the connections that he has had, all of them also go away. Artists may come to request to unlearn art style by providing art samples. They can just say that, look, here is a sample of the art, and I want everything that looks like this to be removed. But they won't be able to collect everything they have on the internet and their adaptations. Right. New York Times may request to unlearn news articles, but they cannot enumerate quotes and secondary transformations of these articles. Right. So article 1 is written, but there are other articles that are written as part of or drawing from this article. That this is a New York Times article, and then this happens. Sometimes this could also happen, right? Many articles could come out of New York Times. How do you remove? How do you remove this? It's very hard. What do you remove? What level do you stop? Is the questions that are super interesting to ask. It's also very hard as of now. How these methods work? Attempting to unlearn Harry Potter involves asking GPT to produce plausible alternative text completions. Harry Potter studies baking instead of magic. You'll also see some examples later about a table which has these kind of unlearned text that these models have produced. Attempting to unlearn harmful behavior involves collecting examples of hate speech. So, meaning if you have to remove harmful content from this, you have to first collect the examples of entire space or some examples at least. So, in this case, the emphasis is just on hate speech, so that can be removed from these models. The last method in the slide that I showed earlier was just ask for unlearning, which is asking to pretend. Here we are not really, so to say, unlearning from the model as in the other methods where we are forgetting about a particular theme or an example. Here we're just saying the model that, oh, please pretend as though you are somebody. So pretend to not know who Harry Potter is, for example. By design, this works best for common entities, particularly these popular entities like Harry Potter or whatever, facts, knowledge, or behaviors. Example, the ability to utter like Rajinikanth that are well captured in the pre-trained set. Since the LLM needs to know it well, it pretend not knowing it well. Right? Given that the model has to know what Rajinikanth is, right? Know it very well. So when you say that, please do things as though you don't know what Rajinikanth is, it does very well. Because it's able to actually keep this in mind that this is all what Rajinikanth is. Don't do that, and then do or behave like as though you don't know Rajinikanth. So, hope that helps in understanding different forms of unlearning. A few short prompting in context unlearning, which is just give some context and then few short prompting or in context unlearning is to give few examples and then prompt the model. Suppose we now have a clearly defined set of forget examples with corresponding labels. If we have that, we can flip their labels. These are called counterfactuals. So it'll come somewhere. Yeah, it'll come here. Counterfactual labels. We can flip their labels and put them in the prompt along with more retained examples with correct labels, with the intuition that the model would treat these falsely labeled forget examples as truths and act accordingly. Okay. So this again, let me go through this one more time. The idea is that you want to create counterfactuals and give it to the prompt, give it to the model, and then prompt it. So the expectation is that the model would treat these falsely labeled forget examples, which is the counterfactuals, as truths and act accordingly. This idea of counterfactuals will come again later, so you can get to know more about counterfactuals at that point in time also. Works best when the forget examples and the counterfactual labels are clearly defined and somewhat finite. Right. It may work for factual associations. Paris is the capital of France. That's the factual association. By enumerating a lot of examples, but are unlikely to work for unlearning toxic behaviors where space of possible outputs is much larger. So the idea is that Paris is the capital of France, right? Build counterfactuals for this. And by doing the counterfactuals, you can actually let the model learn the false information. Paris is not the capital of France, or you can say that Chennai is the capital of France, all of these, right? False information. You can create a lot of these, but unfortunately for information like toxic behaviors in the model, it's going to be very hard to remove this through this model, through this method. Counterfactuals may not work, right? Other examples for counterfactual could be men are walking, women are walking. There are lots of these kinds of examples, data sets also that has been created for counterfactual labels. Okay, hope that helps. Okay, evaluating unlearning. Now that we understand how these models are, what is the background that we need to know, the forms of unlearning, what these models entail, let's look at what are the ways to actually evaluate these models. Efficiency, how well the model is doing, model utility, and forgetting quality. How fast the algorithm is compared to retraining. If unlearning method only takes like as long as it takes to retrain, that's not a good idea, right? Do we harm performance on the retained data or orthogonal tasks? Right? So you want to make sure that, again, if you understand the false positive, false negative thing, you want to make sure that by unlearning, you're not harming the performance of the retained data, the data that is, the data that is still in the model, that is where the data was taken for learning the model. Right. Forgetting quality, how much and how well are the forget data actually unlearned? Right. You want to make sure that the forget data is actually forgotten. Efficiency, how fast? Model utility, we don't want to harm the performance of the retained data. Forget quality, how well the model is forgetting. Evaluating efficiency and model utility are easier. We already measure them during training because you know that how well, what time it is taking, how well the retained data performance is. The key challenge is understanding the forgetting quality. I think this is where we'll spend more time on from now on. What are the ways by which the quality of forgetting is happening? If the forget examples are specified, this feels easy too, right? You know that what examples to be forgotten is easy. Unlearning a particular image class may intuitively mean getting a near chance accuracy on the images in that class. An evaluation protocol may also measure accuracy, high on retain, test set, low on forget set, or the likelihood of the forget test sequences, lower the better. Lower the better for the likelihood of the forget text. Models can and are supposed to generalize knowledge from other training data about the same images or class. That's what the model is supposed to do, right? Meaning, I don't think so. Even though the models produce these texts, one can make an argument that, look, somebody should have asked these kind of questions to the model, so it's producing. But the model also learns from the data and from the interactions. That's why this conversational part has become more and more effective. With the conversation, it is able to actually learn more. That's what this means. Model can generalize knowledge from other training data about the same images or class or concept. One could also perform membership inference attack on the forget examples and decide that the unlearning is successful if the attack success drops below a certain threshold. And you can do membership inference attack on the forget examples and then decide how well the effect of the unlearning has happened, which is also this. Continuing on the evaluation itself, LLMs that have never seen Wikipedia articles are unlikely because all models are going to use Wikipedia data. More broadly, a key challenge for evaluating unlearning due to the black box nature of the deep learning, the counterfactuals of not ever seeing the forget data can technically be undefined, even when forget examples are clearly defined, right? Even when you know that you want to remove forget set being that PK's PII or some factual information about something, the counterfactual of those examples, the models may not have seen. right? So that's the idea here. More broadly, that's the challenge also, challenge of evaluating and unlearning. Due to the black box nature of the deep learning models is that the counterfactual of not ever seeing the forget data, what should be forgotten, can technically be undefined, even when forget examples are clearly defined. Many low-level metrics, such as those based on similarity or retraining, implicitly select such a counterfactual, say through the choice of the optimization algorithm, but other counterfactuals exist too. It may pick some counterfactuals, but one statement, one text can have many counterfactuals, right? It may not be able to take all the counterfactuals while it is unlearning.